Hello everyone, this is Vikas Pathak from Asiaville. Today we have with us Mr. Mahesh Vyas, who's in the Center for Monitoring Indian Economy in Mumbai. And he's with us today to discuss the unemployment situation as per the recent estimates that the CMIE came out with. So welcome Mr. Mahesh Vyas.
Thank you.
Yeah. So let me first of all ask you that the CMI, it seems, has done some recent estimates on unemployment in the country. So, what is the situation in terms of unemployment, and how does it compare with previous such estimates that you may have brought out in the preceding years?
The Center for Monitoring Indian Economy does a survey on the employment and unemployment situation in the country on a continuous basis. So this is not a one-off survey. This is a survey that is conducted every day. At the end of every month, we come out with an estimate of what was the unemployment rate in the previous month. So, for example, in the first week of March, we came out with an estimate of the unemployment rate in February, and the rate in February turns out to be 7.2%. 7.2% is a fairly high unemployment rate in India. This has been rising, and it was 7.1% in January. Before that, in December, it was 7%, and it has been rising continuously since July 2017. So month after month, more or less regularly, we see an increase in the unemployment rate. It has reached 7.2% now.
Okay, Mr. Vyas, just tell me something. Why is there a constant increase over the last 1 year almost? What has been the impact of, for instance, because you've been conducting regular surveys, do you find a major change pre and post demonetization? And what could be the other factors due to which this rate is high?
So one, there is a secular reason why the unemployment rate is high or rising, or there is stress in the labor markets. That is that from 2011-12, we have steadily seen a fall in the investments rate. So around 37-38% of the GDP was getting invested in 2011-12, and now that number is down to 27-28%. So that's a very sharp fall in the investment ratio, and I think this has had a major impact on the employment generating capacity of the Indian economy. So this has been going on for a long time, and then over and above this, you see this GST, and before that, the demonetization. So both the demonetization and the GST had an impact upon the small and medium scale industries where jobs were lost in a big way. So one is a continuous decline in the investment ratio, and second is these two shocks that happened recently, which is the reason why the unemployment rate is rising.
Another thing, Mr. Vyas, as you said that apart from the continuing reasons, we had demonetization and then GST. So, do you think that while of course many economists have now said that demonetization did not make economic sense, it was a very bad move. Some top economists have said that. That apart, many people believe that the GST as a regime may not be bad as such. But do you think that GST should have been spaced out? Because once a shock had come after demonetization, going in for GST immediately after was some kind of a double jeopardy.
The concept of goods and services tax is certainly a good one. It is certainly an improvement on the indirect tax system we had before GST was introduced. So there's no question about GST being superior to the multiple and complex indirect tax structure that we had before that. So that's not being debated over here, or the merits of GST over an alternate system. What is being seen is the collateral damage of introducing GST the way it was introduced. A. B. The damage caused by GST when it was introduced soon after the demonetization was put into place. So I think if you have a declining investment ratio, then you have a demonetization. If you follow that up with a GST, then the impact is much larger. So there was going to be a collateral damage. There was going to be stress in the smaller and medium scale industries with the introduction of GST. But that impact became much worse on the economy as a whole because this came in the light of two big, large problems.
And what do your trends suggest or estimates suggest in terms of the labor force participation rate? And could you also tell our viewers what exactly this rate is and why is it important, and the recent trends in this?
I think the labor force participation rate is a lot more important than the unemployment rate. In India, we have a low labor force participation rate. Mind you, this is not the case in all countries. In developed countries where the labor force participation rate is reasonably good, which is around maybe around 65, 70, 75%, then you don't have to worry about the labor force participation rate. In India, the labor force participation rate is less than 50%. In our estimate, it is 42 to 43%. This is really an extremely low participation rate. Now, what is this rate? This is the proportion of the working age population. What is the working age population? People who are more than 15 years of age. So if you are more than 15 years of age, then it is assumed that you'll begin to participate in the labor force. You'll start looking for jobs, start working, so on and so forth. In India, we often do start a little late if you are educated, but nevertheless, you do start after 15 years of age if you're a casual laborer, for example, from a less privileged society. So people who are more than 15 years, this is a global definition. How much percent of them are working? Globally, that number is around 66%. In India, that number is 50%. Now, that's a problem. If you want the economy to grow, you require more people to work. We cannot have less people working. Now, this number is not only low by global standards in India, but it is also declining. So, in 2016, early 2016, according to the CMI survey, the labor participation rate was of the order of 47 to 48%. This has now fallen down to 43%. That's a very sharp fall, which means that of the order of 5% of the working age population have exited the labor force after demonetization and GST. That, I think, is very, very stressful for the economy. Why have people left the labor force? Why are they saying we are not even looking for jobs? That means the labor markets are so stressed that people are saying there's no point in looking for a job, no point in telling these surveyors that we are looking for a job and not finding it, because we don't even think there are jobs over there. That is the reason why the labor force participation rate is very important, and it is actually very stressful in India currently.
So, as you say, the recent decline from anyway a very low labor force participation rate could show some despondency among people. That maybe you're looking for a job for 6 months, some kind of work, 7 months, 8 months. After that, you just give up and you tell the surveyor, sorry, I'm not even looking for a job. But why has it been low traditionally in India? What could be the reasons? Why are people not looking for work? Is it that maybe more people are gradually going into higher education, though again, our in that sense also our gross enrollment ratio is not high? Could it be that women are going into higher education? Could it be that women who are working as domestic workers are not part of the what is the job market per se? What are the reasons?
The low labor force participation rate in India seems to be cultural. It is not something which is identified as belonging to one category or another in India. It's not like it's in South India, but not in North India, or vice versa, or East or West. It's actually not only limited to India, it is actually a South Asian phenomena. This phenomena exists in Pakistan, in Bangladesh, and partly in Sri Lanka, but not in Nepal. In Nepal, the labor force participation rate is high. Now, what happens is that countries that are very low on their per capita income on the development scale, more people work. Basically, if people are very poor, they go out to work a lot more. A lot more women in Nepal are working. In India, women can stay back at home because the household incomes have reached that inflection point where they say that women need not work. So all economies go through this. You go through a phase when, as the per capita GDP goes up, women move out of the labor force. Then when it increases further, they come back to the labor force. This phenomenon is seen, but we seem to have got stuck at a low labor force participation rate. A. B, I think it's important. It is imperative that more of our women go back to the formal working markets so that the income levels grow up, so that education goes up and health improves in the country.
Okay. And that apart, my last question in this particular discussion would be, what do your estimates say about the number of those employed? What are the trends in recent years? And how is this different from the number of people unemployed? I mean, conceptually, what is the importance of the number of people employed in terms of concept? And because we often hear of unemployment rate, but employment rate is something that we don't hear so much. So, could you tell us something about that?
So developed economies usually talk about unemployment rate, and unemployment rate being very important. Unemployment rate is a measure which takes the unemployed people as a proportion of the labor force. Now, if there are lots of people who are coming out to seek jobs and not getting jobs, we say the unemployment rate is going up. And that's a problem. But in India, as I said earlier, that is not so much of a problem because not many people are coming out to look for a job. And therefore, the labor force participation rate is important. Now, there's another measure by which we can get an idea of how good the economy is doing right now. And that is the employment rate, which is the number of people employed as a percentage of all working age population. So how many people out of all the people who are more than 15 years of age, how many of them are employed? So we would expect this number again to be, quite high. It should not be as low as it is in India, which is only around 39% according to us. So 39 to 40% of the working age population are working, which means 60% of them are not working. This number is extremely low and has been falling. Now, this fall is more stressful because it anyway is low. So I think this employment ratio number is what we should be looking at more than looking at the unemployment rate. The employment rate, which is currently around 39%, is too low. We need to bump this up. And this can only happen if investments go up.
Okay, thank you so much for your perspective on the unemployment situation in the country and the recent trends where you say that it has been declining, at least in the last 1 year or so. So thanks for this very insightful discussion, Mr. Vyas, and we'll come back to you again with more discussions on the economy. Thanks.
Thank you.